talk on Capitol Hill about impeachment. It's coming from Democrats more than Republicans. What would you say to those fundraising appeals?
Listen, this whole talk about...
Have you opened up a Pandora's box by going forward?
This whole talk about impeachment is coming from the president's own staff and coming from Democrats on Capitol Hill. Why? Because they're trying to rally their people to give money and to show up in this year's election. We have no plans to impeach the president. We have no future plans. Listen, it's all a scam started by Democrats at the White House.
Republicans say it was the Democrats who started the roll toward impeachment of President Obama. Democrats have fired back. All they were doing was taking their cue from the other folks across the aisle. And there is no doubt that however it started, the Democrats have profited greatly from the public discourse and seen their bank accounts swell with donations and Democratic hope for winning the midterms and keeping the White House. In other words, what we have here is a great script for an entire season on House of Cards. Welcome back to MidPoint. The GOP strategist held hostage inside the Beltway, who is also president of Endeavor Strategic Communications, Kurt Bardella, joins us. Kurt, good to see you again.
Hey, great to see you too.
Here we go, Kurt. Let's start right out with Representative James Clyburn. Our audience is going to see the graphic here. I'm going to read it for you. A Republican congressman from South Carolina held a Twitter town hall on Monday. He said that if the GOP can maintain control of the House, President be impeached. Now, here was the Twitter going back and forth. Clyburn disappointed in lack of fire from Democrats in supporting POTUS. When did the Democrats stand up to GOP? Shut down all the talk of impeachment with a hashtag Ask Clyburn. Clyburn comes right back and says, at liberal phenom, no way to shut down the talk, nor should there be. It's real, and I predict if GOP maintain House, Obama will be impeached. Kurt, is this a smart strategy to follow in the first place?
No, I think that this is desperation personified, and we've seen this playbook before, especially from someone like Jim Clyburn. You might remember that when Republicans took control of the House, the lead up to that election, Democrats everywhere were saying, including Jim Clyburn, if Republicans get control of the House, Darrell Issa will subpoena everything under the sun. He'll go after Barack Obama's birth certificate. Here we are, 4 years later, hasn't happened. This is the same type of scare tactics they try to use unsuccessfully to prevent Republicans from taking the majority in Congress. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. And it says a lot that when you have nothing good to say about the path you're on, the policies of the Obama administration, the policies by Harry Reid and the Democrat-controlled Senate, that the last resort that they have is to try to demonize Republicans, use scare tactics, manufacture this ridiculous idea that House Republicans will try to impeach President Obama. Every leader in the House has said this isn't happening. This is not a reality. Hasn't stopped them from using this extreme rhetoric.
I want to go right back to something you just said a moment ago. And he did indicate that Republicans will investigate President Obama's birthplace if they take over Congress. Wait a minute. Let's all take a breath here, as I've said a couple of times already here today. Can we not just stop the nonsense, is what so many people will ask. Should this not be about issues? And when the Republicans bring up things again, like the president's birthplace, are they not just torpedoing themselves to those people who are still wondering who they want to vote for after Barack Obama?
This type of, again, it's extreme rhetoric personified, does nothing at all to convince voters on either side of the ideological spectrum to vote for you. And when you have nothing good to say about the economy, nothing good to say about healthcare, nothing good to say about energy and gas prices and the Keystone Pipeline, nothing to say about the IRS overreaching, targeting Americans for what they believe, they have to resort to these ridiculous tactics that are just theater. There's nothing to it, no substance to it. It's not like Speaker Boehner every day saying, yeah, I'm going to hold a vote to impeach President Obama. You don't have any congressional chairman saying we're going to have hearings about the legality of President Obama. No one is saying this except for the Democrats. And again, I don't think that they think it's going to work. I don't think they think it's going to get them anything. I just think they know they have nothing else to say right now because the country is under siege right now. We have a border crisis going on. Our foreign policy is a disaster. And what's the president doing? He's partying in Martha's Vineyard.
Why then, in your role as a strategist, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and look at it from that aspect. If indeed this is, in your words, desperation, demonizing, nothing more than manufactured, why is there not someone in the Republican Party taking a hold of this congressman and others and saying, stop, do you really want to hurt everybody's effort here? Because I'm going to mention that in many elections, they say you've got to go after the independents. You've got to go after the undecideds. You're going to get your party. The other party's going to get theirs, maybe some crossover. But these are the kind of things that get blown up in the media, and people look at it. And again, to be frank, and this doesn't come from me, this comes from people I know, the first words out of their mouth are, how could you be so stupid?
Well, I think there's something to be said if I were their strategist, which I'm glad I'm not, but if I were, I would say that they need to motivate their base. They need to have the liberal Democrats, the diehard followers of President Obama who would do anything for him to come out and vote, because they're not going to take back the House. They're likely going to lose the Senate, but they don't want to completely be marginalized electorally speaking. They still have a 2016 election to think about, and they need a strong showing from their base if they're going to really carry over and be potentially successful in 2016. So I don't think you're going to see Democrats calling out these kind of tactics, because frankly, they need their base to be excited and energized. They need a group of people to buy into this ridiculous idea that maybe Republicans will impeach President Obama. Maybe Republicans will overreach. This is why we need to show up to vote to stop this from happening. They need to give their base a reason to turn out. The public policy issues aren't on their side. The facts aren't on their side. So the next thing you could do is to try to create some theater and misdirection.
All right, let's talk about theater here for a moment. Here's a couple of sound bites you'll be able to listen to. The audience will see as well. First up, here's Representative Mick Mulvaney talking again about begging to be impeached. Listen up.
The only people who want impeachment more than the right wing of the Republican Party is the entire Democrat Party.
Because it makes them look bad, that's why.
Oh, they're desperate for impeachment. They would love to be able to talk about impeachment and immigration between now and the November elections instead of talking about jobs and the economy and health care. They are desperate to change the dialogue, which is exactly why you heard the president starting to talk about his amnesty, because he's begging to be impeached.
All right, now let's back that up with White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest on July 29th. This was after John Boehner made the allegations that the impeachment talks were coming from the Democrats, and here's Josh Earnest.
We've seen comments in recent months from Congressman Steve King from Iowa, Congressman Ted Yoho from Florida, Congressman Lou Barletta from Pennsylvania, the distinguished Congressman Steve Stockman from Texas. His fellow Texan Blake Farenthold has raised this prospect. We've even seen Carrie Bentivolio from Michigan call this a dream come true. I think that was about 9 or 10 months ago. So that's an indication that if this is the case, then maybe the Speaker should direct that attention and that message to members of his own Congress.
All right, Kurt, let's stop going back and forth here. I'll get your opinion on this. The Republicans say the Dems started it. The Dems say the Republicans started it. Where did it all begin? Who's to blame here for basically stoking these fires?
Clearly the White House and the Democrats are stoking the fire, because that's all that they're talking about right now. The idea that 4 congressmen out of a conference of more than 200 somehow speak for the Republican majority, and frankly 4 congressmen who they're not exactly in the GOP leadership, they're not committee chairmen, they're not driving or dictating the agenda. It would be very different if they had the majority leader or the new whip Steve Scalise or Speaker Boehner or Darrell Issa or any number of the higher profile authority figures within the party saying something. But Blake Farenthold, Carrie Bentivolio, who I think just lost his primary election the other week, these are not people that drive or dictate the Republican agenda in any way. Yet the highest, at the upper echelon of the Democratic Party, Jim Clyburn, who's in the Democratic leadership, Josh Earnest, White House press secretary, they're talking about this. You don't see anyone in the upper echelon of the Republican Party talking about it, just the Democrats, and that tells you exactly who's driving this.
All right, so here we go now. About a minute and a half that we have left here. You're the guy in charge at this point. We're getting down to the game plan here. You have the economy, you have war, you have unemployment, you have the border, and then on the other hand, you have the president's birthplace, and you also have impeachment. How strongly do you get everybody together and tell them, first, stop talking about these two, but then where do you suggest that they now focus on? Where have they got to go to get those independent voters?
Oh, I think no more place is more important than talking about jobs and the economy. We saw today the new report out, unemployment. People looking for unemployment benefits has gone up again. Most of Americans feel that the economy isn't improving, that their access to opportunity is not getting better, that the promises made by this president of what was going to happen if we passed this massive stimulus, if we passed Obamacare, that their quality of life would improve. These things aren't happening. And I think there's a very real sentiment throughout working Americans who don't pay attention to what goes on in Washington every day because they're real people. They're very disenfranchised with the direction that this country is going. And when that sentiment takes hold, you look at who's at the top of the chain, and it's President Obama and it's Harry Reid who can be held accountable in the November elections.
All right, 10 seconds. If they do continue to follow this impeachment line, do they lose a lot of votes and maybe lose the midterms?
They absolutely, they look out of touch. When you're not talking about the issues that affect real people, you look completely out of touch. You look like you've gone Washington. You look like you're playing some kind of parlor game, and people, I think, are smarter than that.
Let's only hope the American public is. Kurt, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Look forward to it.
All right, later on this hour, another personal attack launched by a questionable commentator that proves again how America has lost all respect for those who have earned it. Next up, the radio talker who believes we should kill them all and let God sort them out. His words. You'll hear him right here on MidPoint when we continue.